Sure, there are quite a few questions in here about MPIO training and about how once they've done the course, what other sorts of support and upskilling of MPIOs you can do. Have you guys got any suggestions around that?
Paul, I might kick off with you. I might chip in there as well in a minute.
Yeah, sure. I mean, with the MPIO training, obviously it's the two components. So it's the website of doing the online training on the website, which is half a dozen modules or so, which takes about 2-3 hours. But then that's backed up by the face-to-face component. So at your state and territory, if it's run through your Sport and Recreation Department or the Equal Opportunity Commission, to have that 3-hour face-to-face training component as well, and that's a really important aspect of it as well, where you can discuss and go through a lot of what we deal with in these areas are grey areas. You can give the information and facts about them on selection or behaviours, abuse, that type of thing, but a lot of it's context-based, unless it's just overt discrimination or child safety issues. So a lot of it, that face-to-face element is really important in fleshing some of those things out and how you can deal with those better. So once you've done those two things and have got those certificates, yeah, you pretty much got a good framework of how you can start in that area. And I guess from there, it's just you know, practice. If someone comes to you, it's practice on resourcing and going back to what you've learned in these different areas. And you know, practice makes perfect with that. The more you use it, the better you'll get at doing that. And not just that, of sharing that information in a club. As you know, with clubs and the nature of volunteers, that people do move on. And it's no use having all your resources or your corporate knowledge in that area based on one person, then it leaves. So it's very much about sharing that information as well, so that legacy stays within your club. And then there is the section on the Play by the Rules website with MPIO support there. So it will be updated with different specialist articles and advice that comes through for people who have done that MPIO course.
Yeah, and it's certainly on the agenda to look at ways that we can better support the MPIO network out there. So we're looking again at innovative ways, you know, perhaps through webinars and things like that in the future, that we can discuss, you know, have an MPIO based webinars around particular issues and have some case studies and things like that. So it's up to us again to be creative in how we do that. Deb, are you still there? I think we might have lost you for a second.
I'm back on. Sorry about that. It just dropped out.
So Deb lives in the country, so. Okay, Kat, well, perhaps time for one more question.
There are quite a few questions in here about finding out different information. So people asking about how to find out about MPIOs, people asking to find out about what policies are in place at, say, national or state levels. So is the advice there really that Play by the Rules is the place for that, or what's, where do they go to find out that sort of information?
If they were looking at what policies are placed nationally, then obviously work through each person's own sport at a state or a national level to find what policies. They usually are locatable on the websites and things like that, but contact through the sport as well. We will certainly address questions post the webinar. I realise there's quite a few coming in, which is great, and some of them quite specific. Any other sort of general ones, Kat, that we can throw at, just try and stump Paul and Deb if we can?
There were, just as a bit of information, lots of the questions were around certain topics.
Yep.
So lots of people wanted to know things about child safety and where to find more information, parents behaving badly,
Yep.
And then a lot about policies. So I don't know if any of the panel have any comments around either one of those topics or?
Yeah, what I might do that is sort of get some final comments from Deb and Paul. That kind of leads in quite nicely to about the evolving issues that are occurring, and what perhaps do they see as some, this is questions without notice, issues coming up in the future around the broad area of safe, fair, inclusive sport. What are some of the issues you might see coming in the future? Paul, I might start with you.
Well, there's always the perennial old favourite around sports rage and abuse from either parents to players or referees, officials, that type of stuff. That from my time at Play by the Rules, that's never abated. It can be specific around a particular issue because it was framed around race or gender or disability, but in essence, that the issue of abuse is still there. Play by the Rules address that to a certain degree with information around ground marshals and what they can do to act if there's an incident, and how they can mitigate things, and some support materials there. And the other issue, other than the social media one, which has been covered, is around inclusion, that clubs wanting to do a lot more around inclusion for people from different, whether it's from different backgrounds, whether disability issues, gender issues, whatever, that having really good intentions to do more around inclusive issues for their club or organisation, but just a bit hesitant of lacking some of the knowledge or ability or skills to do that, and that holding them back. So and you can probably talk to it, Pete, but we've just developed this 7 pillars of inclusion, which will go on the Play by the Rules website shortly, and that goes around key concepts around inclusion that'll answer a few things in those areas and provide codes and resources. So they're probably the main ones.
Yep, yeah, certainly, and watch out. We'll be in touch with people around those that new inclusion resource that will be on Play by the Rules very soon. Thanks, Paul. Deb, any sort of ideas about what I guess there's old and new issues around this. What do you think is the emerging issues, Deb?
I'd have to agree with Paul. I think we'll always have the perennial, what we call ugly parent syndrome. So the over enthusiastic parent. Sorry about that. And I think also selection issues is a perennial.
Yep.
You'll always have parents who believe their children should have been selected or not getting sufficient time on the field or in the pool or on the court. I think we're always going to have that issue. Personality clashes, I think when you boil it all down, one of the biggest things that clubs struggle with is when you just get people who cannot get on, and it becomes very diversive. People start using bad language. They start saying it's discrimination or harassment or bullying, but at the end of the day, it's just people not getting on. And I think we have to get better at dealing with that and better at communicating with each other. And I suppose in terms of an emerging issue, sexting is one that worries me. It was something I did start to see just before I left the commission, with people taking inappropriate images of each other, and then texting those, sending those images to their friends. Coaches taking inappropriate photos of themselves, sending them to their athletes, and that's something that I see as potentially increasing.
Yep.
And I'd just add, Pete, of just sport. It brings out the best and worst in everyone. You've got that intense passion. You throw into that mix the competition aspect, and then throw into that mix of people's children. And it can often be an intense cauldron there, and it really does bring out the best and worst in people.
It does indeed. It certainly keeps us in a job, and Play by the Rules will continue to grow. I'm going to sort of close it off there. We're just approaching the hour mark, which is terrific. This has been a great kind of test webinar for Play by the Rules, who we may certainly do some more in the future around specific issues. But thank you very much, Deb. Like I said at the start, we wouldn't be here without you at all. This wouldn't be happening. So really do appreciate your time and many years of work in Play by the Rules. And Paul as well, for your input here, and certainly progressing rapidly. I'm a bit daunted by the prospect of trying to follow in these footsteps for at least for a little while at least. But thank you as well, Paul, and for your input here. Anything to say thanks very much, Paul and Deb.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pete.
I'll just mute those two now. And finally, everybody, I'll close off there. We will get to all your questions in the post-webinar materials that we produce. So there will be. I'll notify you as soon as we have the materials ready, which is a recording of this webinar, plus also any materials, frequently asked questions. I would put any links to specific resources within Play by the Rules as well. That usually takes me about a week or two to develop that post webinar. But thank you very much for your attendance. Any feedback at all, please don't hesitate to contact me there. Certainly if you have suggestions as well for future webinars around this topic, so I'm more than happy to receive those. Well, thanks also to Catherine Duff for moderating and helping us out with the questions and the polls and everything else. So thanks, Catherine. So thank you everybody much for your attendance here. And like I say, we'll be in touch pretty soon with the recordings and the materials from this particular webinar. So thank you. My name is Peter Downs. Thanks very much for attending.